Hello, I'm Ben. Welcome to the channel. So today we're going to go over an article that I read recently. It's called What Happens When a Generation Never Grows Up. And this is in the Wall Street Journal. It's a story by a young lady named Rachel Wolf. And when I look into this article, we've talked about this before in previous videos, but basically it's 30-somethings saying that the past expectations around being a grown-up no longer exist. So Americans in their 30s have never looked less like grown-ups. In this article, she says, amid the steep declines in homeownership, marriage, and birth rates, economists have long been warning that young people are struggling to meet the milestones of adulthood. Although some 30-somethings are consciously choosing a less traditional path, many of these seem like the goals are simply out of reach. So here's the issue with this. When my grandparents built their first house, houses cost about $1,800 to $2,500. When my parents got their first house, the houses went from around $75,000 to maybe $100,000. When I bought my house, the houses around me, which are the same square footage as one I grew up in, and I was middle class, right? We were lower middle class. We had to work. We had a farm to work and those type things, but we were middle class. And after I went on and my older brother went on, they kind of moved up into upper middle class in the housing selection. So their house was no bigger than mine, but when I bought my house, you're talking about $200,000. And when I refinanced my house 10 years later, they suggested the worth on it was almost, it was doubled. So it's more than $400,000 that the house is now worth. And so when you look at that and you think about what these young 30-somethings are thinking, it's not hard to understand what they're saying here. Stuff is just getting more and more expensive. And with inflation and with the issues that we've generated in the last decade in the United States, that can be very difficult. So you think about, we had a recession of sorts, then we had COVID that knocked people down and took people out of the office in jobs that were deemed unnecessary. And then after that, you come back and you have a president that's an absolute imbecile, and inflation goes up by 17 to 20%. So it does show that there are some economic factors that have impacted this generation. Also, this generation is the first generation to live off of mostly processed food, right? So when you think about that, the health issues and the suggestions around processed food against natural foods has been spoken about many, many times. And with Trump coming into office with his new health czar, I expect some of those things to be more popular and more talked about. You think about the one that he was replacing, it was an old man that thought he was a young woman, and he was fat and telling people what they should do to stay lean and healthy. The guy was completely unqualified to be in the position. So it's not surprising that the stories that came out of Washington and the watch over these type things were limited. So basically it says that the share of childless adults under 50 who say they are unlikely to ever have kids rose by 10 percentage points between 2018 and 2023, from 37% to 47%, according to this Pew Research Center, have decided that they're not going to have children. The conventional explanation of what's freezing young adults in place is that they can't afford to grow up given rising inflation and ballooning housing costs. The ballooning housing costs, I do think, are legitimate. I think it's an issue where we don't stick with what the expectation should be in owning a home, and instead of it becoming an asset, it becomes this anchor around people's necks, right? Median wages are another thing to discuss for ages 35 to 44. Median wages are actually up by 16% from 2000 to 2024, which means the median wage now is $58,522, and that has grown to $67,652. So basically 35 to 44-year-olds on average are making $67,000 a year. Now, when I was in that age bracket, that wasn't the case. You were talking about $40,000 to $50,000 a year, so that has gone up. However, the inflation has increased at a more rapid rate, which means the 67 probably is more like the 45 that used to be earned only 2 decades ago. So, overall, the wealth of 30-somethings rose from 66% in 89 to 22. It looked from 62,000 to 103,000, according to the St. Louis Federal Reserve. It says that the 30-somethings wealth has increased from 62,000 to 103,000 on average. Only 21% of adults in their 30s rated the overall economy as a good or excellent economy last year, per the Federal Reserve. And Economists rather say young adults are significantly more pessimistic about the future as prior generations were. So we've talked about Gen Z and Gen X quite a bit on this channel, and we talked about the millennials and alphas. Here's the point. We live in a world now where there's too many things to make us look elsewhere as opposed to looking into having a career. A lot of people don't value education. They've listened to the bull that education doesn't make you better and that there's no sense in getting a college degree because you can get these jobs that don't require it. Well, here's the point. You can get tons of jobs that pay a greater starting wage than a wage that you would get if you have a college degree. That is a fact. However, your wage in that job will stay flat for quite a long time. Whereas if you get a college degree, you break through this glass ceiling that exists in most places. I know that's awful that it does, but it does exist. And in each 2-year increment, you can see that you will increase your income, where this other person, yes, they make more money from the start, but it ends up flatlining in the long run. The other thing is expectations. So you've probably seen the videos on YouTube and elsewhere where they're asking young ladies on the street, and these are always street people at bars doing these things, right? 6th Street in Austin is one that they use often. They ask a girl, for you to date this guy, what do you require? And the girls are like, he has to make $100,000. And so this girl's talking about a 25 to 30-year-old man saying he has to make $100,000. That's extremely rare, less than 1%. It takes most people into their late 30s or early 40s to make over $100,000 a year. I was an exception to that rule. I owned a gym when I was a kid, and I made good money then. And that's why money was never the thing to make me look into something. What made me look into the job or the career was the opportunity that it had and the education I could get from it. So I think folks of these generations, these 30-somethings, I think that they have a different viewpoint. The way they see the world, this is the suggestion for your article, says they see the world as they're going to live in 20 years from now is really screwed up. She points out that climate change, political polarization, AI, and a growing resentment of corporate power have made the future feel more uncertain. Here's the thing. With the exception of AI, it's the same thing they promised in the past. AI is the new conversation where it used to be internet, and before that it was phones, right? So you went from phones to phones and fax machines to phones and email to email and cell phones to now what we have today, which is 24/7, people able to get in touch with you. So I think that's the thing that's probably draining people's juice the most, is that you're on the job 24/7 when you are working a job. Younger adults are far less likely than Americans over 50 to say achieving the American dream of success from hard work is still a possibility, according to the Wall Street Journal in July. But here, too, the reality is more complicated. At least part of it, stunning the growth of a generation of young people as outsized dreams for what a good life looks like. That is the piece that I would call out. These people have expectations that are ridiculous around a good life. Back when... So it's easier if you're married to have a more stable financial situation typically, because if you have two incomes coming in that situation, those two incomes, you can get ahead and stay ahead unless your spending is way out of control. You know, I do think our expectations are much higher today, but I don't think we have the skills that people had in the past either. So generations before us didn't expect to have large houses where every kid had a bedroom and there were multiple vacations. That's a fact. My father was one of 7, and they lived in 2-bedroom houses, and he and his brother slept typically in the kitchen, and his sisters were in the bedroom, and they shared one bathroom and did all this. So, of course, everybody was in athletics. That way they could shower and use facilities at schools and colleges. And here's the point, though. Of those 7 kids, 6 acquired a PhD or a master's. 6 of 7. They grew up in a 2-bedroom house, 7 kids and parents, and their parents were in education, right? So the point is, it's not that stuff is out of reach. Granted, the prices and inflation is ridiculous. It's ridiculous that a home in America now costs over $200,000. That's ridiculous. Acreage prices are being driven out, and that's been done on purpose to make it where people can't afford those things. Okay. The government, when you become a citizen that owns a property, owns a house, you begin to think about things a certain way. The government doesn't necessarily like the way you're thinking about those things. Okay. So that, I think, is a condition that has not been around either. We've allowed the government to get way too big, and it's made our dreams get smaller and smaller because the price tags has gotten too large. So I do think that is true. Be sure that your financial average is just that. A sizable share of this generation is worse off than their parents were. Young men in particular are struggling in the labor market, and some of the traditional goals of adult reality have become more difficult to achieve. Student debt has more than doubled over the past 2 decades, yet a college degree is no guarantee of a well-paying job. Rising interest rates and dwindling supply have also put homeownership out of reach for many growing Americans. The median age for first-time home buyers hit a record high of 38 years old this past year, according to the National Association of Realtors, and it's up from 35 as the average in 2023 and 29 as the average in 1981. So understand that these financial limitations, they've been done on purpose, because someone that owns their own plot of dirt has a stronger value of their constitutional rights, has a strong value of themselves, and that, when it comes from a federalist standpoint, is a bad thing, because the government doesn't want you to have that self-security. So it's important that people get back to the idea of home ownership is the right dream. Maybe don't own a home that's 4,000 square feet. Get one that makes sense for you, and downsize your life to the point that it fits in that capacity. Another thing I'll say is, morally, the 30-year-olds that are now in their 30s, morally, they're not the same as the generations came before them. Now, it's more often you'll find a woman who has 4 kids from separate fathers. You'll find, I had a guy work for me one time that said he had 14 kids from 6 or 7 different women, and those women knew he had all those kids, yet they kept sleeping with him and having more kids. And he said, well, don't worry, Mr. Ben, it's all right, because after 10, the state don't make you pay for them no more. After 10. So now you got 10 more kids that are going to grow up in poverty and learn what he learned when he grew up in poverty and perpetuate that same activity. So it's really not comparable to what came before, because without those morals, you can't create the goals, right? It says the next, to be sure, the financial average is just that. A sizable share of this generation is worse off than their parents were. Young men in particular are struggling with the labor market. Well, we are struggling with the labor market. We're bringing tons of people in from other countries, and a lot of the general labor jobs have gone away because of new tech and AI. So here's the point. You got the same article telling you that college degrees aren't preferable, yet the jobs that don't require additional skill sets are no longer being done by people. They're being done by automation and being done by AI now. And here's a point too. I used to run plants. What I did for the last 6 years of that was to go out and make plants more efficient, more effective, and a lot of times that was putting equipment in place that used laser eyes and technology that did not require people anymore. So where you used to have a shift that required 21 people, now you have a shift that requires 7. And 2 of the 7 run those machines, and the other 5 do different jobs. I mean, that's what it came down to. You had machines that replaced 7 to 10 people at a time. And most companies went through that. So when you have people talking about wages, the hourly wage is not a problem. The problem is the cost of things. Prices and taxes are too high. And when prices or taxes are too high, you have this degradation of what people should expect in their lifetime. High expectations and challenging economic circumstances make many 30-somethings sound disoriented and unsure about what it means to be a successful adult. This gentleman specifically is telling me, after watching his parents raise 3 kids and buy a house on his parents' salaries in retail and manufacturing, Cody Harding assumed that he would be first in his family to earn a bachelor's degree, and this would grant him an even better quality of life. Although he now makes around double what his parents did at the height of their careers combined, he's disappointed by what it affords him in New York City. All right, so let me respond to that. New York City is stupid and ridiculously expensive to live in, okay? So number one, move out of New York City. If you have to live in a city, find a city elsewhere that actually has decent rates for apartments, homes, etc. Yes, you're earning 2 to 3 times what they are, but you could earn half of what you do somewhere else and have a much better lifestyle because the cost will be more amicable to what you're doing. So basically he says he's just never caught up. He feels like the school debt and the job situation, what he's getting paid, has impacted him. A lot of people, here's the next comment. There's a young lady they were talking to, and she said she enjoys meeting friends and waking up when she wants, which makes the upheaval of children unappealing. Motherhood, she says, is a non-starter. So let me say it once again. I don't think it's the job or the financial situation that's changing the situation for 30-somethings in America. I think what's changing for 30-somethings in America is they don't have morals, okay? A lot of people have kids before they're married. A lot of people don't have kids at all because they want to be selfish with the time. And that's going to impact them. When they get older, 42, 45, 50, and they don't have these things in life, then that will be a bigger problem for them because they'll feel less fulfilled, like they're not made their mark in the world. And I mentioned my aunt before in a video, but I had a great aunt that died of Alzheimer's. And in her lifetime, she decided not to have children. She was educated highly and traveled the world, China, or she liked the Asian area of the world. And she spoke some of the languages. A very highly educated individual. However, on her deathbed, she was asking for her children. She said, "Where are my children? Where's my husband?" As she was dying, she forgot. All that education, all that travel, all that went away. And she cried for the last months of her life about the fact that she had no children, she had no husband, and she felt like she had no legacy left on this earth. So that's kind of what you have to think about. I would say it's a good article. It's a bit one-sided because these people will figure a lot more out in the next 10 to 15 years. But I'll say this to those that are 30-somethings. You can't find externally what you need. Those things come internally, right? So you can't find a way to be happy outside of yourself. You have to determine that for yourself. You have to forgive things of your history, right? Forget the past and try to build off of what you can do and just try to get better every single day. If you do that, that's how you get out of this situation. And you don't have to grow up, right? I still play with my nephews. I think they're great. You don't have to grow up as you get older. You can still have a kid-like sense of wonder and fun. You can still play your video games. You can still do your hobbies or do what that is. But you need to dedicate at least 3/4 of your time to your future and building a better future for you and yours. And whatever gets you to that. I mention books on this table, on this channel all the time about getting to that around finance, around, first things first, around business. Study those things, watch more videos like this, and get custom and comfortable talking about the things that you're currently uncomfortable talking about. At the end of the day, the only person who can change your situation is you. And locality, your location does matter. So to this gentleman that lives in New York and makes all this money but lives like a 17-year-old, move somewhere else and have better respect for yourself. Let that money that you earn you a position elsewhere, and then take half that income and put it into buying a house and paying the mortgage off as quickly as possible. That's the goal that my generation came with, is you buy a house, you have kids after that, and you pay the house off as fast as you can so you're not in debt your entire life like your parents were. So that should be the expectation. But wealth matters. What you think wealth is matters. My definition of wealth is being able to do what I want, when I want, with who I want, for as long as I want, right? I want to have freedom. Tomorrow, if I want to sleep till 2 o'clock, fine. But on the days that I'm working, I'll work from 7 in the morning, 5 in the morning till 12 or 1 at night because I enjoy what I do. So if you enjoy what you do, that will change a lot of things for you. And get all the noise out of your head. It's simple. The reason people go and get college degrees is because as you get older, you can do less physical work. And guys, let me tell you, that can be increased dramatically by an accident. I was hit by an 18-wheeler. I can't do a third of the stuff I used to be able to do just 5 years ago because it's injured my body to the point that the pain won't allow me to do what I used to be able to do without even blinking. So the point is, the college degree gives you the opportunity to earn as much as you can, as fast as you can, so you can pay off a mortgage, so you can do these things that make sense. So when you get to the point that you physically can no longer do the same things, you'll still be okay. All right? So your reality will change very quickly, and things can change it very quickly for you. So that's the focus I would give you. I would hope, one, if you have faith and you have a Bible, do that. Number one, put God first and everything else second. After that, you'll do better. 2, get the education that you need, but do that driving towards something that you enjoy doing. 3, do things in the proper order, right? Court date, marry, then have kids. Don't get someone pregnant outside of marriage and expect that to work out. It's just chaos. You're adding additional chaos yourself. Be responsible. Be responsible for what you do and how you do it. Do those 3 items. The 4th item is constantly look for a better opportunity for you. Constantly looking to better. Your job is a paycheck, okay? Don't get stuck in one place forever and not take the raises and the other opportunities where you can make more money. That's the 4th one. And 5th, understand that your happiness comes from within. Okay? Nobody can make you happy. Nobody else can save you from anything. You have to do those things for yourself. Hopefully this was informative and something that's worthwhile to you. If you liked the video, please like and please subscribe. Please share this video if you think other people may benefit for it. The initial article that we talked about was What Happens When the Whole Generation Never Grows Up. That's by Rachel Wolf in the Wall Street Journal. I'm Ben. Please subscribe. Be good.